And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Translators on Air. My name is Dmitry Kornikhov. I'm your host. Join me today, my incredible co-host, Yelena Terещенko. Hi, Yelena.
Hey, guys.
And our guest, Nancy Matisse. Hi, Nancy.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Nancy has been working in the translation industry for more than 20 years. She has been working as a translator, reviser, technical specialist, project manager, and teacher. She currently manages her own translation business in Belgium. And she also teaches a translation project management course at 3 universities. So this is going to be the topic of our discussion. I think it's a very interesting conversation. But before we go there, just a few announcements, as always. The second season of Translators on Air has been sponsored by our friends at Smercat. Smercat develops technology for translators, and they offer it absolutely for free. So if you're looking for a free CAT tool, check out their website by clicking a green button below this video. Or if you're watching this in the recording, you can always visit the first link in the description. And we just lost Nancy. Okay, I can see that we have a few people who have never watched this talk show before.
Sorry, the thing is that I had another computer on the show also, and I could hear. I could hear it, so it was better to avoid it.
It's okay. So I was just talking about our platform because I see that we have a few people who have never used it before. So I'm just gonna quickly introduce you guys to this platform. We are recording this live, so everything that is happening here is happening in real time. You can use the chat window on the right-hand side just to say hello and tell everyone where you're from, what kind of language pairs you're working with, or what was the last thing you have translated today or yesterday. If you have a specific question and you want Nancy, Yelena, and me to discuss this question during our conversation, you can click an orange button below this video that says ask a question or suggest a topic, and we'll be more than happy to discuss your questions. Okay. Hello, Bernard, Sofia, Ina, Christina, Stefan, Alina, Fernanda, Alessandra, Felicia, Ronnie. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. It's a ton of fun to have you here. We are hoping you'll enjoy this today's conversation, and we are very excited to have Nancy on our show. Okay, Nancy, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. How are you?
We are really good.
Good.
It's finally starting to feel like the winter is coming to Toronto.
Here, definitely. You might hear me coughing during the show because I'm a little bit also bad with the temperature for the moment.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Yeah, it's this time of the year when you can just it cannot be avoided.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Nancy, can you please introduce yourself? Tell us a few things about yourself and your business and how you get into this profession.
Yeah. So I live in Belgium, where I have a company, a translation company, and I teach also, not only in Belgium, because I do it remotely. I started, first my studies maybe. I studied translation a long time ago, approximately 25 years ago. And I studied English and Spanish into French translation. And right after, I decided to also study economics in order to specialize in academic translation. It was a teacher who advised me to do so, so I started an economic degree. And afterwards, I decided to continue, and I made a third cycle at university studying ERP, you know, those software managing companies via IT. So I thought that having IT and economics and languages might help me on the market in general. I wasn't quite sure what I would do because I was a little bit frightened to translate the whole day long. So the funny thing is that I sent my CV to many, many companies. I think I sent 180 CVs at that time for marketing and management, because that's something I really learned to enjoy, even more than translation. And actually, I was hired very quickly during my third cycle by a translation company. They were looking, for translators or revisers in this area, IT for for managing companies. And they thought I would be a specialist because I was studying it. The thing is that I had just started, so I was not really a specialist at that time. But still, they hired me as what they called a linguistic reviser. So basically, I was supposed to check that everything was correct on the linguistic aspect after the technical revisers had checked themselves the translations. So I learned a lot in this sector, of course, and I really enjoyed it, much more than what I could think. But I was working on site in Brussels. So it was a really good and young team. And at the beginning, I was not really good at using computers. I hardly knew how to use a mouse. It was new at that time, don't laugh, but it's true. And very quickly, I moved to other projects, which were localization projects, software localization projects. It was brand new at that time. So I was trained. I had some trainings on site. I was sent to Microsoft, for instance, having some localization trainings. And after some time, I also started to manage a team of linguists first, and then a full team, being a project manager. I got some training in project management, in fact, at Microsoft. So that was also interesting to really understand how they were managing their own projects. So I stayed in this company 7 years. And after that, I left the company. At the very end, I was in charge of the whole PM and production department. So I had the opportunity to hire and train lots of project managers. And I restarted everything on my own, just thinking that I would just leave the company and see what would happen. And very quickly, I restarted translating myself. And I got more and more requests. So after 1 year trying to, do the translations, do the revision, find other people, and very quickly having also some requests in other languages than mine, which is French, I got pushed by one customer telling me that the business was growing too fast and they needed to be in touch with the company rather than a freelance person. So I turned this business into a company. But honestly, I continue to work the same way, meaning working with partner companies and freelance translators, but not really having a company structure. We don't have offices, we just work from home. And at that time, in parallel to that, I was asked by a school to teach software localization. So I started teaching software localization. And little by little, I added translation project management to my courses too, because students were interested. They wanted to know what translation project management was, because I'm talking about 15 years ago, they started to see announcements in the newspapers asking for project managers in translation agencies. So they wondered what this was, and I tried to explain them, and then I put that into a course. So that's how everything developed, basically. And it's been 15 years now that I'm running this small business on my side from home.
Fascinating. I especially like the part how your client actually pushed you into turning it into a company. So clients are actually a great source of motivation for growth and development.
Definitely, yeah. They told me that their head office, it's a huge company, it's a worldwide company, everybody knows this company, but they told me that at the head office, they thought it was strange to work with such volumes and dealing only with one freelance translator. So they wanted something more concrete, if you want. But it's good. It pushed me in the right direction, probably.
Yeah. Before we launch into our...
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
Before we launch into the topic of our conversation, could you please tell us a few words about why this subject, the translation project management, is interesting not only for project managers, but also for translators who work in-house or freelancing, and also for other parties involved in the process?
Sure. Well, really at the beginning when I started those courses, I addressed myself to future project managers, but very quickly I realized that this was the audience for project management courses was broader, because we all manage projects all the time. That's what we all do. We manage our translation projects or translation requests that we receive from clients or from translation agencies. So I think it's very important also for freelance translators, but even for employees to know how to organize their work, how to schedule the different projects they receive, how to be able to know if how to the evolution of their projects. And of course, for freelancers, not only for project managers, it's important to make sure that they apply the right rates, that they can calculate the rates and prepare a price grid, that they can make quotation, make sure that they would check any purchase orders they receive, or that they can issue invoices and follow up their invoice payments. So all those things are part of project management. They are much more into this, but I think it's important to really follow those steps and know, we will do it without knowing most of the time. Now, I think it's also important, probably already at university, to introduce project management to students in order to make them understand that in many cases, they are not isolated. They are working in group. They are working with other people, even without noticing it. So it's important for them to know who would work before them, like people preparing files, or who would work after them, people revising their translation, doing DTP. What is the consequence of any action they might do during the project, or bad action like delivering late? It might mean that someone would have to rush revising the files, or a DTP person might have to work during the weekend in order to compensate the lost time. So I think it's also important to make them understand that it's a whole, and that there are project managers, either in agencies or even on the client side, who are really relying on them to be successful in their project. So it's a teamwork, basically, and I think that's important to make them understand. And the last thing also, probably, that's something I insist a lot in project management, even though sometimes we can discuss the fact that it's more for linguists, but I think it's a whole, and it's important for project managers and for everyone involved in the project. It's to manage consistency between people, between projects, between components within the same project. So again, it's this thing about being part of the same team, but managing consistency, all of us working on consistency, means also that we have to understand the process of a project and understand that one project might be linked to another one from the same client, that we have to exchange glossaries, translation memories, make sure everything is updated, how to launch a project, what is needed to launch a project. And all those elements go together, basically. And I think it's part also of project management. At least that's something I explain a lot, consistency, the importance of consistency during the courses.
Nancy, can you please tell about your company structure and how does the project management process in your company works?
Okay, so my structure is probably not the typical translation agency structure, because basically there is only one employee, myself, and still it's a medium-sized company. So I work here in my house, where I have a full floor for my business, because I'm surrounded by computers. And the project managers access remotely to those computers and to the network. They have, some of them have their assigned computers, others share computers, and they access the network, of course. Maybe, probably as a parenthesis, next year we move to the cloud, but I still need to really check that. But for the moment, that's how we work. So all the project managers are freelancers. They work from home also. Some of them work for other companies or other networks, either as project managers or most likely as translators or technical experts, whatever. We have 9 or 10 project managers for the moment. Well, one of them is pregnant. Oh, no, she just gave birth to a little girl a few weeks ago. So we organize ourselves in a way that we have several project managers able to work on any clients. So even for smaller clients, we are several to be able to manage the projects, because, well, we never know. We can be ill or on holidays, whatever. We have some very, very big accounts on which we have 4 or 5 project managers, and then we can exchange the rest. What else could I say? The translations in French and Dutch are done exclusively by freelancers. So we have teams of freelancers for translation and revision. Everything is revised. always. Even with my top translators, I have some translators who were at school with me. We've been very old collaborators. They nearly work full-time with me, and they've worked all those years nearly full-time with me, and we're still friends. But the thing is that I think anyone can make a mistake, and well, we cannot avoid all the mistakes with revision, but at least we can avoid a lot, and I think it's important. Anyway, that's another subject. So this is for French and Dutch. Then for all the other, let's say, main languages like German, Spanish, Italian, Brazilian, Japanese, both Chinese, Korean, those are our main languages. Also for the moment, well, for a few years, Danish and Swedish have become more important, Russian also. We work with teams. So those teams could be either translation companies. I was going to say small translation companies, but actually most of them are bigger than mine. So those companies, in those companies, we have most of the time only one contact person managing his own team. And sometimes it's not even a company. For instance, we have a group in Germany for a certain type of jobs. They always work together. We don't even know who is part of the team, but we've dealt with the same person. Let's call her our local project manager. She's been dealing with our jobs for actually 15 years. Since the beginning, she's been there. So she sometimes also translates parts of the jobs or revises. You see, so for German, for instance, we have 3 groups like that. No, 4. 2 groups and 2 companies. So it really depends, but it's always the same. And those have been the same for years, really. Most of the time, it's more than 10 years. So it's exactly the same persons dealing with all the projects over there. So we really trust them. We know how they work. We know about their quality. And that's, I mean, that's how we survive, with the quality. And then we still have also one partner for technical tasks who is established here in Belgium. It's a small translation, no, localization. Let's call this company relocalization company, because they mainly do technical tasks like file preparation, DTP, testing, multimedia animations, whatever. And in parallel to that, I have a dozen of freelancers who do technical tasks. So, and the same, I mean, they all want to do DTP in InDesign, but we don't always have enough files for everyone to do DTP in InDesign. It seems to be really fun, but we try to share the work between everyone so that we have, I think, a lot of flexibilities. And I should just add that when it comes to Asian, Hebrew, Arabic, sometimes we might ask the teams in the country to directly work on the technical tasks themselves, because it might be a little bit more difficult for us to handle those tasks. I still have the process to explain you, so very briefly this time I'll try. Well, when we receive a project, we make sure who is the project manager dealing with that. Some of them are just automatically assigned to project managers because well, they are the same kinds of projects they always do. We check if there is any preparation needed. If so, either the project managers will do that, or they will send it to the technical team. We try to have flexible people. So the project managers all have a translation background. They definitely know what a translator needs and what type of files they need to work on. Most of them have followed the localization courses we have. So it means they know how to prepare files themselves. And if they have time, they are encouraged to do that so that they really know what is in their project. After the analysis, most of the time we would prepare the quotation and the schedule. Sometimes we don't. We have some agreements with some clients where we simply receive jobs, we launch them, we keep the analysis, like let's say we work a lot with Trados, so we keep all the Trados analysis, we store them, and then at the end of the month we make the budget for the whole month, so that the client knows what we have done during the month, and we would just invoice. Those are
probably the arrangement with some long-term clients, right?
Exactly. So it works well. They trust us. We trust them. Goes in both directions, and it's easier. It's easier than having to approve, I don't know, 100 quotes per month. It would be crazy. And then we just launch the files, and we control everything, and we make sure what steps are needed. Typically, we have a lot of marketing projects in the IT sector. So typically we would plan quite a lot of steps in production. So really the production steps would be preparation, translation, revision, linguistic QAs on some specific projects. Let's say for documentation, DTP and illustration work, then we would have a DTP QA based on PDF files, an LSO, so a linguistic sign-off, meaning that we send back the PDF files to the teams so that they can check that nothing was corrupted during the DTP or something DTP people can't notice because they don't always speak the language. And afterwards, we would produce the final material after corrections. Most of the time, we have this strange step that we call regression. It comes from my previous job. Regression would just mean that the QA person or the PM would check that the corrections have been correctly implemented. And then we send the files to the clients. And most of the time, on many projects, the clients validate the files we sent simply because those are marketing files. So they want to make sure of what is published in marketing. You know how it goes, right? And then if there is anything we have to change, we change, and then we deliver again. So it's quite long, but I mean, it became automatic now. We all have this kind of process in mind, and that's mainly what we would do on marketing projects.
See, well, it's a fascinating process, and it's quite complex when you think about it. Although it's probably parts of it, or larger parts of it, are probably automated.
Not for
right?
everything. Basically, some projects are automated because we use the client's tools. Our clients have installed themselves different tools. We have clients working with SDL Word Server or Global Link, Global Site, and those are, well, translation management systems automatizing the steps in production. So we have to follow what those tools do. We don't use a tool on our side. We follow what the clients want. For the rest, we most of the time deal with FTPs. So we have an FTP server and we have the project on the FTP. So we always make sure everyone knows who is involved on the project. So we don't hide the names of people. When we launch a project, we most of the time launch it having all the names of the translators, of team leaders in copy, not blind copy, normal copy, so that everyone knows who is on the project and they can collaborate, ask questions and so on. But they also know, for the translators, who will revise themselves so that they can deliver either by email or on the FTP to the next person, so that it's not blocked in the PM inbox. And it's the same for the technical steps. Everyone knows who is going to work on the technical aspect of the project, so that any communication or files is directly sent to them with the PM in copy. So we don't really have to always rush reading emails and making sure nothing has been blocked somewhere, which could happen. So it eases our work. So even we don't automatize everything, but open communication, in my opinion, helps a lot.
This is actually a great approach, because when you know who your proofreader is, who your reviser is, you can arrange the work on the project. I do it sometimes with some of my revisers. We just arrange when it's better for us to work on the project. We ask the PMs when they need to deliver the final file to the client.
Exactly.
And then we work in a way that we need to work at that moment, at that particular moment.
You
and
collaborate, actually.
We collaborate, and we also, I think it also lifts some load off the PM's shoulders, because they just don't have to, they can trust us, because we care about our reputation and we know that we need to deliver that on time. So we just we can arrange it in a way. We have more flexibility. I mean, the translators and revisers in such as with the system with open communication have much more flexibility, and they probably enjoy working with you more than with agencies who have other practices in place.
I hope so. Most of them have been long-term collaborators. Again, well, I'm just trying to count, but maybe let's say 4 of them were at university with me, so they are also old ladies. Some of them were collaborating already in my previous job, and we found ourselves again on the net or whatever. And then I've got lots of students also. I mean, teaching is also great because I can spot also the future talents, if I might say. I'm in the good position to propose jobs to future translators or technical people. Most of the time it's for technical work and then PM, but yeah, it helps also. And I know sometimes agencies, and it was like that in my previous job, agencies are a little bit worried about this kind of open communication for everyone. Because it's true that the teams might decide to work together and try to get your end clients, for instance. And I always feel that, well, if they want to do it, who am I to prevent them from doing that? The thing I need to show and to be sure is that we have an added value as an agency. If we don't have an added value, then why coming to us and why working with us? There's no reasons. If we can add some values for the clients and for the subcontractor, then I think it makes sense to have us in the middle. If not, okay, go together. I think it's quite logical. But sometimes for some project, they could easily work directly with the client, because sometimes, you know, we have a project in Microsoft Word into one target language, no technical task, and that's it. So of course, they could work directly for the client. But then the next day, for the same client, we might receive a request with some graphics in Adobe Illustrator and some flash animation to be done in 20 languages. Well, it becomes more difficult then for them to do it on their own. And not everyone wants to manage projects, you know, I mean, not at this scale. So if they enjoy doing their task, it's good. And there's always possibilities to evolve.
Yeah. Even with clients even with tasks or projects involving only translation into one language and a Word file, you have to get that client first. Not everyone enjoys doing that either. So
yeah, that's right. That's right. I don't actually, to tell you the truth, I don't like trying to get new clients and being in marketing. I'm not a marketing person. I can't do that, and I don't have any marketing manager. So we just do it our own way, and when there are new clients, we are happy. Maybe one day we will have to do it and to try to get new clients ourselves. But so far, so good. We've been quite happy with the way it went. And as you said, also it's important it's difficult to get clients. So when we have a new client, we try to keep this client. I think we put our energy in keeping the clients rather than in getting new ones that we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense to make sure that your clients are happy and that they understand your value, the value that you offer as an agency, and of course that freelancers that work for you also understand that you also have value in terms of acquiring clients, growing with the clients, making sure the client makes a payment, and then everyone gets paid at the end of the job. So there is a lot of tasks involved in the work of the translation that maybe they are not that visible, but they're there and they also have their own value. I had a question. I wanted to learn more about how you analyze your translation projects, and why do you think it is important to analyze all the projects that you receive?
Again, this is something I really put the focus on, and year after year when teaching, I've really expanded this session on analysis. In some schools, I even spent 4 hours just on analyzing files and projects, because I think it's key. It's one of the main tasks of a project manager, but also of any other project participant, at least if a project manager hasn't done the whole work for him. It's to analyze the project. So basically what we have to do first, and it could take only a few seconds, it's to analyze the kind of job you have received. Is it simply a documentation job, or is it a software job? Does it involve a website, or is it more multimedia, or something else? This category I call miscellaneous, because there could be anything in this category, which are not the most easy project. Most of the time, those are the complicated ones. When we know what project we have received, and again, that could be something that the client announces us, here is a software localization project, we have to check what are the components of this project. Do we have only software, or do we have also a user guide? Do we have some licenses, marketing material? Is it a website, or is there a website also associated to the new product? Most of the time it happens. There is a website announcing or explaining the product. Might be some multimedia animations. So we divide that into components, because for each component, there might be different people involved, different tasks involved. So it's very important to make sure we identify the components. For all those components, we quickly check what would be the units to be used afterwards for preparing a quotation or a schedule. Like for the linguistic tasks, on our side, it would be words most of the time, sometimes characters, if the source language is Japanese, for instance. And then what would be also the units for any technical tasks. Do we have DTP involved in the project? Then we need to know how many pages we would have to deal with. How many illustrations? What kind of complexity are those illustrations? Do we have screenshots? Is there anything to be counted per hour, like testing, debugging, whatever? So once we know the units, that's done also. The 4 steps in the analysis would be to determine what would be the production steps to put in place for the project. Do we need only translation, which is, again, not something normally we wouldn't do. We would always have translation and revision, but I mean, sometimes I could imagine only translation might be identified. Do we need a linguistic QA or not? Can we then switch to the technical task? Do we have any technical task? Because sometimes we don't. If we do, what kind of task is it? Is it DTP? Is it something else? What kind of work do we need to do on illustrations? And then according to all the tasks we know, we will determine the resources, which is the last step. Resources, the human resources on one side. So with what profiles for the translators do we need? Like for a license, we might look for one of our translators who is more used to translate legal stuff, whereas for marketing, we would typically go to some others. And for a software interface, again, not everyone knows or like how to translate an interface. The same for technical people. We would try to know exactly who we need or what kind of profiles we need. If possible, we would check the availabilities already. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it's just a project we have received for quotation, but we're not sure we will get the project. So we might just make a rough analysis, trying to figure out which kind of profiles we would need. Are we able to do that? Most of the time, for instance, I would refuse some domains like medical translations. I don't have really people in my team able to do that, so I'm not going to launch a project with 25 translators in the medical sector. So those are things we would check. And the final thing, of course, would be the material. What kind of material do we need for this project? Do we have glossaries? Do we need to create some? Is it possible? Is it going to be paid by the client? We try to make them understand how important it is. Style guides, translation memories, reference material, whatever they would be able to provide us with, like typically some rules for product names, which is my nightmare. It's always been how to deal with product names, sometimes even with people titles in companies. They just think that we know how they use the titles in the different countries. We don't. So even if I was told once that I was the expert, yes, maybe in some parts of my jobs, but I don't know the client's company by heart. So it's impossible for me to know everything about what is in the company plans or whatever. So that's it, basically, really understanding your project. And I think it's essential, and people need to spend the time needed on that. And again, it might not be a long analysis. Sometimes it's just a matter of a few minutes. But if you need to spend a day on it, then spend it, because there might be so many consequences in the future on your project afterwards. If you don't analyze it completely and you miss some parts of it, you might make a wrong quotation. You might not schedule the project well enough to deliver on time, and then you'll be late. You might not select the right resources, or you might just forget some steps in the production, or on the contrary, include steps which might not be needed on this project. So it's very important because that's the moment where you are supposed and able to really identify all the potential risks on your project. And it's much better to know since the beginning what could be the risks, and maybe you can already solve them so that they don't transform themselves into problems, or at least you can think about the solution you might put in place if those risks really turn into real problems. So it's not always easy, especially for complex projects, but it helps. I mean, if you master your analysis, you master your own project. I think it's key. So that's why I really try to explain to the project managers, but they know that, at least to the junior ones and to the students, because I would say it's exactly the same for any other participant of a project. They should understand exactly what they have received. And if they receive an analysis already done for them, great. If not, they have to do it on their own and make sure that they will be able to do this project. Better to refuse it than not doing it well, I think.
Would you say that freelance translators working probably with agencies would also benefit from analyzing the projects they're getting to work
Again,
on?
it depends. If the project manager from the agency just throws you the files that, without having even looked at the files, and is expecting the freelance translator to do the analysis himself and maybe to do some preparation work, which happens sometimes, then yes, you have to do it. There's no way not to do it. If the agency you work with is preparing everything for you and explaining you what they have done and what they are sending you, then you gain time, which is again the added value of the agency. But a freelance translator could also work for an end client, and then he is the only one responsible for making the right analysis, the good analysis. It will allow him also to ask questions, to make sure about the instructions they received from the client, and as project managers to prepare themselves good instructions also. If you just receive like through all the files, all the participants and don't do anything, you don't even know what to tell the people to do. You don't prepare any instructions. It's only when going deeply in the analysis that you can see a few things. And sometimes you can go very, very far in the analysis. I'm a translator who haven't translated a lot in my life, but I'm still a translator. And I really enjoyed, at the time I still had time to prepare software projects. Something I really enjoyed, for instance, was to read all the strings before sending them to translation, try to quickly think in my head how I would translate those strings. And whenever I had a doubt, I tried to already solve the doubt, looking at the software, the documentation, asking the clients. And then I prepared everything before sending to translation. And I had several teams at that time, like 5 or 6 teams working on big projects, having something like 60,000 words in the interface. It was so easy to try to do it on my own and then send instructions telling them, okay, this string means that and not that. I was sure at that time that people would translate it correctly, rather than just assuming that all of them would do this work. As a project manager, you have also to identify all the tasks that, when done once, would benefit to several teams, instead of sending anything to anyone and expecting 10, 12, 11 people to do it, because it's a loss of time having 10 people doing the same task. Whatever you can do acting as a hub should be done. But honestly, you don't always have time. I mean, putting this theory into practice for all the projects, it's impossible, because it would mean that you have to read all the material you send to translation. But what I want to say is that I really enjoyed doing that. It was fun, but those were very important projects for me, very important for the clients. I took the time to do that. I probably spent 16 hours a day just making sure that those kinds of projects would work well. There were key projects, definitely. I knew that if I was successful on these projects, I would get much more jobs from those clients. So, and I enjoyed it. That's my problem, probably. I had so much fun doing those kind of things that I would have done it for all my projects at that time. Maybe not.
It doesn't sound like a problem to me.
Well, see, then you understand me. I'm glad.
Well, Now, to me, it makes a perfect logical sense to make sure that you check the project before sending it to translators. Make sure that you ask the questions that need to be asked rather than dealing with thousands of questions from 20, 30 translators who are asking the same thing or trying or having problems in the exact same spot, like problems with names or abbreviations or etc. etc. So I think it's part of the responsibility of a project manager to make sure we avoid those bottlenecks before we actually kick off the project to the team.
I think the problem is time also, you know. That's really the problem.
Yeah, time,
pressure,
of course,
because sometimes a project manager might receive a job which is urgently needed for Friday, so they just rush to launch it. Now the advice would be, okay, launch your project and then maybe check it. It's still time, a few hours after having launched it, it's still time to send instructions and recommendations. It's not too late. But again, you have to put that into practice.
It's a great advice.
Speaking about time pressure, sorry, Elena, I want to ask a few questions. Speaking about the time pressure and working with clients and translators at the same time, what can clients do to simplify translation project managers? And the second question is, what can freelance translators do to make your life easier?
I propose we create the perfect world where all of them collaborate. Well, I think the first thing is that clients should be extremely clear about their expectations, which is not always the case. Some clients, we work with different clients, and within some client companies, we have a lot of requesters. One of the company we work with, for one of them, we have something like 80 contacts within the client company. So you can imagine how different their background can be, how different they can be themselves when sending us instructions, sending us files or whatever. Some of them really master translation. Others have no clue about what translation means. So they don't know exactly what we do. And actually they don't care. And it's fine. I mean, we are there to help them. So if they don't want to really understand what we do, that's fine for me. But the thing is that still, they should really let us know what they need. If possible, when they need it. Sometimes we have clients sending files and saying, okay, I need this translation ASAP. Okay, as soon as possible. As soon as possible for me is tomorrow morning. Is it the same for you? So we could also remove some stress from the project managers by being very clear and having clients being clear with us. Sending us references also. They should understand that we need their own references to do a good job and give this reference material to our own teams. Of course, glossaries if they have any, translation memories, because of course some client companies maintain their own translation memories. As I said, any list of whatever, well, good references. If possible, correct files. Files on which we can actually work directly, if possible. Again, I can understand that sometimes, especially in big companies, the translation requester only receives himself a PDF file. So he doesn't have any other choice than sending us a PDF file. Well, we try to avoid that. We try to explain them that before that, they should check on their side and send us the real material in the source layout, like FrameMaker or whatever. But that's difficult. That's where we lose time. But again, we have found some agreements with clients that when they send files, we prepare them and they pay for the preparation if they haven't sent us the right material, because we spend time on that. And that's the time they should have spent themselves trying to find the material. If they don't have it, they should understand that we will need time to work on that. So basically, what we expect from client is to understand our needs as well as we try to understand their needs. And they should understand our work and what it implies just to send us a PDF file or something else. I really like also having clients validating the files, because then I'm sure of what has been delivered. I know that they are happy with that. If they have other preferences, they should let us know so that we integrate that also in our own style guides or translation memories. We make sure on the future jobs, the translators or the translation teams will receive the information, but at least we know. I don't really like when the client never tells me what he thinks about the translations we delivered, because when well, suddenly he might decide to go to another company, and we might not have noticed anything previous to this change, simply because maybe he was not happy, but he didn't let us know. So it's important for the client to understand that we can evolve, we can try to get a better understanding of their preferences and hopefully meet their expectations for future projects. What else? Recently, we have had 3 experiences in a row of urgent requests, but really silly requests, where we were requested to do a huge volume very quickly, hiring people to work overnight during the weekend and so on. And I hate those kind of requests, like everyone, even if the client pays double price, I don't care. It's the kind of request I really don't like. I can imagine and I can understand it can happen. But what I don't really understand is that nobody could foresee that it was going to happen. Normally, someone was writing the original material, and they knew they should have had the information that at a certain stage, this material would require translation. So why not already warning us 1 week before, telling us, hey, we are writing something very urgent for a request for quotation for our own clients, for instance. This will need to be translated as soon as it's been written. We might be on a rush situation. Please, can you set up a team for us so that we can do it? I think it's very important. Instead of sending me the request at 5 in the evening, telling me, okay, put a team in place right now, we need to start tomorrow morning. No, it's impossible. I'm not going to call everyone with people already in their bed, trying to get people on time the next morning to work on that. So that's really something important for me also, that clients understand that forecasting is really, really important for an agency and, well, for everyone, actually. Many things probably to add to that. I don't know if you think about anything yourself, but the ideal client is for me the client collaborating and understanding what we do, even if they're not able to give us what we need. But if they understand, great, we have a good relationship.
I think most of the time clients simply don't know how to be a good client. We have a lot of companies or individuals that never hired a translator before. They never worked with the agency before. They don't even know what translation is and how to go about it and how much time and effort it takes to deliver a high quality translation. So I think part of your responsibility as an agency or as a translator working with first-time clients is making sure they understand how to be a good client. And in order to achieve this, I think we need to be very straight with our clients, and we honest and transparent, trying to explain them how the process works. That you cannot urge those big jobs over the weekend because definitely. Nothing good ever comes out of it. I mean, you might get lucky and get a good result once, but 9 times out of 10, you'll get substandard work, and you don't really want that for your business if you're a client, because translation is an investment, and it takes time to deliver a high quality translation. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges for you as a manager of the translation agency who has to communicate this message to first-time clients, as you say, clients who.
Most people are just responsive, you know, when you explain them things in a nice way, and
absolutely, yes.
If they don't feel that you just try to get a lot of money for nothing, and you really explain them what you are going to do, what are the risks if you don't do it this way, why you don't want to change your way of working. Most people actually appreciate that and will thank you for being so open. Absolutely. And I prefer also to be quite open about a maximum of things with the clients, because hiding things, it never works really. At the end, you might have problems, so it's better not. I think I have missed a part of your question. You said clients. The freelancers.
Yeah, the second part of the question was about freelancers, because they're actually people who are doing the job, and it's very important to make sure that there is no friction between you and freelancers. And there are probably some things that freelancers can do to make your life easier and their life easier. What are those
well,
things?
the first one would be to accept what they can actually do on the planning aspect, of course, so that they make sure that they know things like their productivity. How much can they produce for this project exactly? Because sometimes they have the feeling that they can translate 2,500 words a day, which is most of the time a kind of standard we use in the industry for technical documentation. But if you translate marketing, you'll be slower. If you translate software interface, you'll be slower. So check your metrics to make sure that you can do the job. Again, normally, the project manager will have done that for you. If it will ask you to translate a technical manual of 10,000 words in 4 days. But then maybe you already have another assignment and you can't dedicate 8 hours a day to this project. So it's important to calculate exactly what you can do to make sure you can deliver on time. Really crucial. And that you can do the task. Are you accepting a legal translation? Okay, have you done that in the past? Can you do it? Are you quite sure about your quality? It's important also that project manager can trust people when they accept a task. They should make sure they have the needed material. Again, it's part of the task of the project manager to send the right materials to the translators or others. But I think it's also part of the other's job to check that they have received the right material. Could happen that the project manager forgot, or that he is replacing one of his colleagues and doesn't really know what people need. Could be. It could simply be that the project manager doesn't know. Okay, we know that this might happen. So really going back and being proactive. Proactivity for me is very important for members of my team. Being proactive, telling me, hey, you forgot to send me that. Or I think here we need a glossary because I've read the text and there's no glossary available. Please do something. Okay, I will react. We will find a solution, but sometimes we need the information. What else? Asking questions when needed. And of course, first of all, I just wrote an article on questions, and actually it turned out to be a very long article because there are so many things to say about questions and the way to deal and ask questions. When asking questions, it's quite obvious, but you have to be clear. It's obvious, but it's not always implemented. Some people, they ask questions and then you have to read yourself a full paragraph to understand the question. So they have to prepare questions to make sure that the project managers will understand the questions easily, will answer the questions if he can, and will be able to directly transfer the questions to the client if needed, without having to spend time rewriting the question. So dealing with questions is very important, and obviously including afterwards the answers to those questions is also very important, because if you ask questions to the client and then nobody implements the answers, you look stupid as a project manager. It would be the same for feedback. Whenever we receive feedback from clients, we would send that to the teams. And again, we need to make sure that the feedback is correctly implemented. That's something we have to rely on the translators also, that they implement the feedback correctly and everywhere. If one word has to be changed in a file, check the other files to see if maybe there are other occurrences of this word. Change it everywhere and not only in the sentence the client read. What else? Collaboration, definitely. We need people to collaborate. We need, again, we have everyone in copy when we send the job, but if someone suddenly finds an important information, relevant information anywhere on the internet or whatever, we expect them to share it with the rest of the teams, even the others not speaking the language. Sometimes information can be shared. Hello, Kat. Can be shared. Is interested, you see?
Yeah. Really enjoyed
it
the
looks
topic.
like a perfect project manager, not stressed at all. So yeah, collaborating, exchanging information. Sometimes I really enjoy also when one team has a question, send the questions by email, and another team answers the question. I think this is great collaboration from everyone. We also have a forum on which we exchange information. Would it be general information, like on my forum, there would be information on my preferences for invoices, for instance, for the invoices I receive. So this is general information, but there could be also specific information for some kinds of jobs exchanged by the French leader. For instance, one of the French revisers is definitely our top linguist person in the team. And whenever she finds information, she would share it with absolutely everyone, even sending emails to the Japanese team while the Japanese is not part of the project. So that really helps a lot, of course. What else? What do you do as collaborators for your project managers yourself?
The first thing that comes to my mind is batching the questions, because I always try not to send each question as soon as I have it, but to batch them and send them in one batch.
Yeah.
And another thing that comes to mind, but it's more on the project management, on the side of the project managers, but I really like it. When project managers send answers, so one language team asks a question, and the project manager sends the reply to all language teams. Yeah. I think it's just great, because some people might be hesitant to ask a question, or probably someone like me who's gathering the questions to send them at the end of the day. For example, if I'm working on a big translation, I might receive the answer to my question before I send it, and then it saves time and efforts to the project manager. They won't have to open my email and read it and then send me the answer to the question I asked. So that's also a good thing.
Definitely agree.
Yeah. What I found very convenient when working in a team with other freelancers is when the project manager or the translation agency sets up, for example, a spreadsheet file where all the members of the translation team can post their questions. They can provide context in one column. They can post their question in the second column, and in the third column, the client can answer those questions directly. So you don't have to bury in your email. You only have one link where you can find this file with all the questions that relate to a specific project, and it's very convenient for translators who are working on a project. They come across something difficult, and instead of just sending an email, they can first check this spreadsheet file, and chances are 9 times out of 10 this question has already been asked by someone else, and it has been answered by the client. And I find this really smooths out the whole translation management process, because everyone is on the same page.
That's really something project managers have to understand, how important it is to actually to read the questions, to read the questions, the answer, and filter and everything. Yeah, I agree totally.
Yeah. We're almost at 1 hour mark.
I speak a little bit. I speak quite a lot. I know.
Yeah, and we barely covered a lot of topics that we had in mind initially. But still, I would like to ask about your book and your translation course that you teach at the university. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think that's very interesting that you teach, and a lot of people will find it valuable.
Currently, I teach in 3 universities. One French-speaking university here in Brussels, a Dutch-speaking university in Antwerp, and I also teach in France, in Lille. This is on a permanent basis, so I've been teaching there for a long time in the 3 of them. The courses are a little bit different. In ULB here in Brussels, the title of the course is Introduction to Localization. So I have the full module for the moment is 75 hours. Another teacher teaches 21 hours. I have a module from someone in 4 hours only, so I have 50 hours. 45 hours for me only. But as I said, since the beginning, I have included translation project management in that. And this course for me is extremely interesting because I teach software localization. Another teacher teaches website localization. And we lost Elena, right? I can go through Okay, I only see our picture. We can then go through what is software localization and all the components localization, and at the same time, I have 2 hours every week with them, explaining them how to manage the different types of projects. So I really enjoy this course because it's quite complete for me. At the end of the course, I haven't gone only through the project management cycle, but also through the whole localization cycle. In Antwerpen, it's a little bit the same, but I couldn't give the localization course anymore because of time constraints. So now it's another teacher who teaches software localization. I know exactly what she does. She does website localization and software localization. And in parallel, I have my translation project management course. But not everyone chooses to follow all the courses. The courses are modules, so you can only have project management if you don't want to have software localization, which means that I have to adapt my course so that PM will also be adapted to, let's say, simple documentation project and not only big, difficult projects. And then we still have Lille, where it's the same story. In the past, I was also in charge of software localization, but now it's another teacher. And my translation project management course there has really been expanded throughout the years. And currently, I have, let's say, altogether 50 hours only of translation project management. So in Master 1, they have 10 hours of introduction. And then in Master 2, they have approximately 30 hours of courses with me, plus still with me a remote exercise where they have real files to manage and they have to go through the whole process, both on the management and on the production side, really dealing with a real project and having a client and knowing them a lot. Myself, but sometimes I even ask them to be the annoying clients to one another, and they are really, really bad, you know, to one another sometimes. We try to do a lot of exercises because I can explain them what I do for project management, which is basically that. I mean, the whole course is based on my own experience, so I try also to tell them that this is my experience, this is my opinion, there could be others. So they have to be open to the market also. Those last years, I introduced them a lot to social network blogs and articles to be read by other people. That's why also I created this little site where I bookmark articles, which is translation bookmarking. It was also to push them to go on different blogs and read experiences coming from the real professionals in the market and not only academic people, explaining them how to do things and then maybe not practicing themselves. So we try also to do lots of exercises. For instance, I explain them a project and then I have to prepare a quotation, and the next session we discuss the different quotations. We do the same for schedules. So really step by step, I explain them the theory and then they make an exercise. At the end, when everything is finished, I send them a lot of exercises, small exercises to train themselves. And then in the 3 schools, I have this huge project described in details, and I ask them to prepare the quotation, the schedule, a tracking file, structure also if they don't work with a PM tool, to calculate the gross margin, and well, to really do everything. And only then they are ready to do the live project. So this is for the academic courses, basically. And recently,
I gotta say, I do envy your students.
Yeah, me too.
You should talk to them first before saying that. Well, we have a lot of
it's a great practice, and I haven't heard that a lot of translation programs at the university they don't have those modules. When I was studying. When I was getting my master's degree in translation, we didn't have any kind of modules. The only thing we studied was translation itself, and we had to practice legal translation, medical translation, literature translation, and that's it. We were not prepared for the actual market. We were not prepared to do the tasks that we are actually doing right now, and it took us years and years to figure out everything on our own. So I think your students are lucky, even if they are not happy with the way you teach or with the way the exercise go, but still it's a great experience, and I would give everything to just to have this when I was studying studying translation, because this is so important.
Yeah, probably me too. You know, especially at the time when I was studying, there was nothing at that time. Yeah.
You also have a book.
Yeah, but well,
can
you know how I wrote the book? Well, first of all, the request, I was contacted by a publishing house here in Belgium some years ago, and they actually contacted me to write a book about localization. I was not really sure I could do it properly. I don't know if you know this book, which dates a little bit now, from Bert Esselink, which is everything about localization. At that time, it was really a book which was read by many people. And I had the feeling I could never do such a book because it was a really good one. I'm sure that even today it could even still work, even if everything has evolved. But I had this book in mind, and at the same time I had been working more and more in project management and teaching project management a lot and really enjoying it. So I proposed them instead to write a book about translation project management, which could be for project managers, but also for translators, for freelance translators. And they immediately agreed with that. So I wrote my book in French. And the way I wrote the book was to take my courses and follow my courses, follow the structure, step by step, going through the different management steps of a project, trying to explain as much as I can. And I wrote the book, and then I asked the opinion to different people before publishing it, and the publishing house accepted it too, and that was it. The book was published in French in 2010 already. So it's time for an update, which has been planned. I've spent this year promising people that I would start updating the book, but except having taken a few notes, I'm not very far, but I'd love to update the book, especially because it's been published in English too, and I would like to update the English version, probably working directly on the English version and expanding it. I still don't know how to do it, probably keeping the first volume the way it is and then having the second one as an extension to the first one, and we'll see. And maybe also having some parts published separately as ebooks, like if you want to know things about quotation, okay, this is the ebook you need, and because not everyone wants to know how to schedule a project in 10 languages. So I'll see. I have many ideas, but I lack time.
Yeah, well, like they say, there is always next year.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the first time I publicly talk about it. So maybe this would push me to really work on it.
Yeah. Yes. For those people who never heard about your book, where can they find it?
In French, it's on EdiPro. I don't know. Maybe I should write it in the chat.
We will. Yeah, you can write it in the chat, and we will provide the link in the show notes.
Okay, so EdiPro is the Belgian company selling the book, and then for the English one, it's on my website. You go on my website, which is called translationprojectmanagement.com. Very easy to find, and there is one page which says book. So you just go there and you see the table of content of the book, and you can order it from there.
Awesome. And like Yelena said, we're gonna post all the links after we record this episode, and we publish it on the Open Mic, so people will be able to find all the links that we have shared.
Good.
Awesome.
We have one question from our viewers, from Lonnie. But I guess that quite a lot of people might be interested in your answer to this question, and that is, what is the name of your company, and do you accept CVs?
Okay, the name of my company is really an easy one, if you know me, because it's my name. It's Nancy Mattins, SPRL. You can send me CVs, but what I usually do with CVs is that I transfer them to the related teams, unless it's for a translator into French or Dutch. So if you're a translator into Russian or Italian, I will transfer the CV to the Italian team, because they are the ones really dealing with the recruitment. I don't do tests most of the time. I mean, test as such, because, but again, it's more, I'm speaking more for my local people, because testing lots of people and having a huge database and then not using anyone wouldn't make lots of sense. So most of the time, I would rather try to involve you on a job if your profile corresponds to what we are looking for, and then maybe you would translate a small part of a real job, being paid for it. And if the revisor says that you really work well for this job, then you would be part of the team. But honestly, I don't really ask for lots of CVs and make a lot of tests. The team doesn't expand a lot. Maybe just taking the example of the French team, where French is definitely our main language, maybe we insert we include 1 or 2 persons a year in the team. And let's be completely honest, most of the time those people are people recommended by others or by people working with us.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's the network really working, or suddenly one teacher at university will tell me, okay, this is a jewel. I've never seen such a good translator at this level only at university. You should try working with this person, and then I might give it a try if we have work enough, which is quite logical. We try to keep our people, the people who work for us, we try to keep them as busy as possible because we want to work always with the same person. So adding someone is more difficult. So yes, definitely, you can send me CVs, but please don't send me 100 CVs tomorrow morning. And then I will dispatch them to the different agencies and groups which work with us.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I think we should round up. But before we do, is there anything you would like to add, Nancy, to what has already been said about translation, project management, relations between project managers and translators?
Well, again, I mean, we've repeated that, and I think it's important, but one of the main value in this relationship is to have a good relationship, a real collaboration. Let's say I'm new, well, now it's been 2 years, but I'm new on the web, on social networks, and I've seen lots of criticism from both sides. Project managers criticizing translators, translators criticizing project managers. And I understand it's quite normal. There are people who don't always collaborate or whatever. I think we should, on the contrary, make sure that we work together and we make this market evolve in the right way, in the right direction, where clients understand what we do and don't only look for very cheap projects made in a rush, and that project managers see themselves as the people adding value to what is happening and not only there to quickly send jobs without really preparing anything and putting the responsibility on the translators. They should really collaborate more. And again, that's something that has been a little bit shocking for me when I discovered all those forums or discussions where a lot of criticism is made. And I think it would be better to talk openly and frankly about that and see how we can better collaborate. I think it's really important. I think this market is difficult, right? And I've been on it for 20 years, and the trend is that rates are decreasing. And that's really something that puts pressure, a lot of pressures on all of us. What will happen if the translation agencies don't react against that? If the translation agencies continue towards the trend of accepting the reductions from the client and not explaining the client how they jeopardize the projects by doing so. I think we are all there to do that, and not, it's really collaborating and explaining the clients that we are working with them. We are their partners to do something good, and we are not just there to provide quickly something very cheap with bad quality. I think that's important. It's a little bit, okay, philosophy, but that's the main thing for me. And that's something I try also to explain to the students, because I know that some of my students in the future will work on the client side. And I ask them to remember that there is a lot of work in translation to produce a good translation project. So just don't go over it by asking stupid deadlines and asking for strong reductions year after year on the rates, because it doesn't lead you to anything good. But again, can we allow our forces to do that? I don't know.
Well, only time will tell.
I hope we can, yeah. So it's been a great talk, and I hope that you all guys who have been listening to it live, and those of you who listened to the recording got a lot of value from our conversation tonight. Thank you, Nancy, for accepting our invitation and for being our guest. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's great.
We will be back next Wednesday at the same time. You can go to our website at translatorsOnAir.com to subscribe to our mailing list so that you don't miss another episode. And please also don't forget to check out the website of our sponsor at smartcat.ai. And we'll see you next week.
Yes,
thank you so much for watching.
Also. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.